Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Above the Tree Line, where we answer your questions about faith, Christianity, and culture. And we are here with Senior Pastor Will Davis Jr.
That would be me.
I didn't blank on your name.
Did you go blank for a minute?
I
Senior
didn't
pastor.
blank on your name.
You got the senior pastor
Yeah, I
part
got
right.
the senior pastor because I should have said Austin Christian Fellowship Senior
Hi,
Pastor.
Lauren.
Hi.
It's great to see you.
Thanks for being here,
Cut,
Will.
take two. What's
Okay.
my name again?
So,
Anyway, welcome, guys. We're glad you're here.
Yes, we are. And this is a question that I've actually been sitting on for a little while. We received it several months ago, and I'm excited because it's not a political question, but it does kind of play into the political climate, political arena, if you will. And that is the subject of the environment. And before we get started, I want to throw out a couple of research statistics here from Pew Research. So I started thinking, this question is mainly about should Christians prioritize taking care of the environment? And I believe, if I'm reading into the question correctly, it's confusing because a lot of Christians want to use their faith when they go to vote, but sometimes the environment is not really high up on the priority list when it comes to like there being death penalty and immigration and pro-life. So I think people are just trying to weigh where does this fall on our list of priorities. So before we get started, I did some research. Evangelical Christians and conservative Catholics tend to support the Republican Party overall. That's a general statement. And when Pew Research asked each party, everybody who identified as a Republican, 82% of them said they identify as a Christian, which is a pretty astounding number.
Wow.
And 63% of the Democratic Party that they polled also identified as Christian. But here's the interesting statistic. When they polled how important the environment was and climate change being the primary issue, 85% of Democrats said this is something we need to address, but only 39% of Republicans said it's something that we need to address.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we are using our faith to vote, why isn't the environment higher up on our priority list? And should it be?
And does theology affect that?
Right.
Go ahead and answer the question. I have no idea.
There you go. It's your turn.
That's fascinating. So back in the 90s, late 90s, we did a series here at ACF called A River Runs Through It. A look at God, Austin, and the environment. And it was so much fun. And I got to address environmentalism for the very first time because it was a hot topic. It was when SOS Coalition was still pretty hot in Austin, Save Our Springs, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll just begin and let you follow up with questions by saying I think Christians are to be extremely environmentally minded. We are told to steward the earth and to rule over it, to bring it under our authority, to care for it. And so I don't know what I can give you theories as to why it doesn't show up maybe higher in our political thinking. But I believe as a Christ follower, I have a God-given assignment to care for what he gave us.
Right.
And I can tell you how that does and does not show up in my world every day. But the whole scientific discipline of studying the planet grew out of believers who took the verse seriously that the earth is the Lord and studied by all who delight in him and in his ways. We should study the earth and understand how it functions so we can better care for it. So that's where I start, and I would think anybody listening would encourage them. Yeah, we get to live here. Let's take as good of care of it as we can.
Right.
John Mark Comer, in his book, The Ruthless Elimination Hurry, has a great chapter on this, on just making good decisions for their planet's sake without being over the top about it. I recommend it to you.
Okay, so that's interesting.
John Mark Comer, sorry.
The wording that you just used. So you said that you believe that we should be environmentally minded.
Yep. Notice how I did that?
But
Former speechwriter. Did you like how I did that? I need to
environmentally
run for
minded.
office, yes.
But you also just said, but not over the top. So where's that line?
I don't know that I know, and it's probably a need to give people grace on this because it doesn't typically affect how I vote. I have higher priority issues than the planet, and that may be partly theological, Lauren. And this is where people can send all cards and letters to Lauren at the church for what I'm about to say. The scriptures have already told us how the planet's going to end. We don't know when. But the planet that we're on is not going to continue to exist forever. It's going to be destroyed ultimately by God as an act of judgment. And we're going to get a new heaven and a new earth that aren't affected by sin. So while we are called to steward this planet, God's got it. And God knows how it's going to end and when that's going to happen and what he's going to replace it with and the redemption that's going to come to it. So while I do spend time trying to steward the planet that I'm on, and especially my closest neighbors are not people. My closest neighbors are birds and squirrels and salamanders, of which we have a ton on our property, which is crazy. Frogs. I rescue a frog a day from our pool. It's so funny. They get there and get them out before they breathe that water. It'll kill them. And it makes us so sad when we don't get them out in time. I rescue birds and frogs all the time. I'm St. Francis. That's what I am. Call me that. Anyway, my theology might therefore cause me to be less concerned about the planet because God has already scripted what's going to happen to it.
But wait, what does that look like? Being less concerned about the planet. It doesn't mean that you disregard the planet and you treat it recklessly.
I think I feel less concerned about trying to vote for people who are going to make changes that affect the planet as much as others might, because I kind of feel like God's going to do it anyway. Now, I may be wrong and very naive there. Like, I'm not a real student of global warming, and I couldn't tell you what I believe about it.
Technically, it's global climate change now.
Thank you very much. See, I'm already behind the curve on that. You just made my point. I don't really know what I believe about that, but I do believe the ultimate global warming is going to be when God burns the heavens and the earth up. So it's going to come either way. That may be naivete, but I do think when I go to the polls, there are bigger issues that I feel as a Christian feel like I need to address with how I vote than something like global climate change, which could be naivete. And again, you feel free to write me and correct me on this. That said, Susie and I take a lot of effort in making sure we do our part to take care of what God's given us. That's natural. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
Okay. So last month, my family and I...
for instance, we recycle. I mean, recycling is not... I'm amazed at the people who don't recycle.
Yeah.
And in the place where we go to visit in Colorado, there's no recycling on the mountain, and it drives me crazy. Like, they're throwing all this stuff, it's going in landfills, and that drives me absolutely crazy. That's bad stewardship in my mind. Something as simple as that. Just recycle well. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, on that same vein, we went to the Padre National Seashore last month, and we were just, I mean, it was beautiful. There's no civilization out there. There's no bathrooms. It's just miles and miles of just coastline. However, that coastline was filled with garbage all the way up and down. And it was really disheartening because, first of all, it was like, people just don't care, it seems like. Like, why there's so much trash. People will come out there and camp and they will leave stuff there, and it ruins it for everybody else. And it's bad for the ocean, it's bad for the animals. But then the second that I start getting like really up in arms about this, there's going to be somebody that's going to be like, okay, calm down, tree hugger, calm down, hippie. It's almost like if you care about the environment, they shame you about it. Like, where does that come from? I mean, I would assume that it's just a result of this massive political divide and this polarization that we have in America right now.
Yeah, you're onto something there. I think it's hard to step into this because of the political agenda that may be behind both sides.
Right.
Those who push environmentalism, environmental protections, and those who do not. There's clearly politics and shenanigans going on both sides of that aisle, which makes it a little more difficult to step into that conversation without being labeled something.
Right.
But I'm with you. That kind of stuff. I'm a mountain guy. I'm also a leave no trace guy. So we really try it when we're out on mountains. To me, it's like your living room. Like, if I walk into your living room and you know I'm coming, I've got a feeling it's going to be pretty clean. I think you're going to pick up. So the beach down at Padre, that's God's living room. Those mountain paths where I go, and if I find a candy bar wrapper or a piece of toilet paper or a napkin on a trail, I tend to pick it up.
Yeah.
Because I want to leave it like I found it. And I want the person before me to leave it like I found it. That's something real simple, but I think it's stewarding what God. It drives me crazy. We're Texans. You don't mess with Texas, right?
Right. Well, and it's a pretty hefty fine in Texas to litter.
I really believe in that.
But I'm like, if it's such a hefty fine, why is there trash everywhere?
So in Nicaragua a few weeks ago when I was there, Lauren, I saw one of the people we were working with just throw trash on the ground. And I was like, ugh, and I thought, wait, back up, look around. They got bigger issues. They don't even have sanitation service down there. So yeah, it so offended me that he threw his candy bar wrapper on the ground. I was like, no, but I was like, okay, Western, back off, look around at where you are. That piece of paper is not going to make any difference down here in Nicaragua. They got bigger issues to fight over. So I had to kind of check myself, but it still offended me.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, but you're saying you were in Nicaragua and saw this. You would see that exact same thing here in Austin.
And I would probably do something about it here.
Yeah. It's funny because I did this year purchase an electric vehicle. And
I know
my
I've heard you
goodness.
slipping up on people around the park. You're so stealthy now in the
It does.
parking
It
lot.
sounds very much like a spaceship. No, it's like a
You're hovering. Yes, you're hovering.
It's like a UFO landing.
That was very impressive.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been working on that. So I have this car, and full disclosure, I did not buy it because I'm an environmentalist. I bought it because gas is crazy expensive, and I'm done paying for gas. So I have this car, but you should see like just the generalizations that are thrown at you by people. It's like, and we make jokes about it. It's like if we could travel to another city, they'd be like, "Here comes the
So I'm guessing
weird
you're a vegetarian. I'm
Austin."
guessing you're a vegetarian too now, right?
Right, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and the people will say, "Oh, you're going to put I voted for XYZ sticker on the back," because there's all these generalizations about if you care about the environment, you're a certain type of person. And yes, I live in Austin and I drive an electric vehicle, and I'm sure people there's
That's two marks
predispositions
against
about
you.
that.
Actually, you live in far west Texas. You don't live in Austin.
Right, I live pretty far away.
live far away,
But
yes.
that is like, and so I just started kind of wondering about that, where people will frown upon these choices. And as in a lot of the people that I surround myself with, we are Christ followers. And I do believe that the Bible says that we are supposed to steward the land. This is God's
Yeah, I
creation.
agree.
So where is that separation? Where did we just throw that out and determine that all these other things are more important than the environment?
So let's do that. Let's try to pull back from, because you led with the politics of this, which I get, and let's free people from that for a minute and just take the biblical point of view, regardless of what the right and or the left are saying. I think the biblical point of view is we are created to rule over our environment, and that includes care for it. It's not that it's here for us just to use and abuse. It's for us to use and to promote better living for humans of what God's given us in this planet, but also to care for the planet that we're on. And that means making good decisions. It means being responsible. To me, it means a lot about caring for animals. Like, I will break for anything. And those snakes and those,
But you break for snakes?
I'll get out and move a snake off the road.
How do you know that snake wasn't Satan?
I'm pretty convinced. I've seen Satan, okay, and it's not in that snake.
That's another episode.
Susie and I care a lot about what's living, including our trees around us and our plants, and so we really try to care for them because I think they're reflections of God's glory. And that little critter crawling across the road, he gets the right of way, as far as I'm concerned, if possible. I just think that's the little things I can do. Throwing out my trash, trying not to put stuff in landfills is going to be there for a billion years, those kind of things. We try to give more stuff away than throwing it away. And that's just my role. And if I can go before God every day and say, I've done my best today for caring for my neighbors and my planet, then I feel good about it. But there's times I've been wasteful. Waste is huge. And waste is a stewardship issue. So let's encourage our listeners, do your homework on this. Forget the politics. Do your homework on this and find ways to delight in the planet God has given you, but also to care for it. And it may change how you live a little bit. Like some people think about the carbon footprint and traveling.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. You do that. But don't look the other way.
Right. Well, you mentioned animals.
I
Okay,
did.
so you'll break for anything. So you don't. Little controversy here. You will not hit animals with your car, but you will eat animals.
Yeah, 100%.
So how is that different?
Well, they're already been. God gave us food provision. I'm not going to eat what I hit on the road. By the way,
Well, you're not.
no,
My
I'm
little
probably not
field
going to
mouse.
stop and cook that. Yeah, probably not unless I'm really desperate. But God talks about arise, kill, and eat. I mean, He gives us the food supply, and He broadened it eventually to meat. So that's nutritious, and God gives it for us. That's how He provides for us. I don't have a problem with that. But if I don't want to be the cause of death for something that I
Right.
don't need to be,
Right.
if I don't need to be.
So one of the arguments that I've heard, all of us have seen, I mean, we don't really have commercials anymore, but growing up, we used to have commercials on TV that you had to sit through and you couldn't fast forward them. But there were all these commercials about like sponsoring an animal, and you get a
Yeah,
T-shirt.
who was that girl with the voice that was singing that
Sarah
song? It was
McLachlan.
terrible.
It was
Yes.
it was such a sad
Torture. 30 seconds of torture.
and that would always like pull my heartstrings. However, there are
My kids didn't go to college because of those commercials. I funded animals instead, 100%.
but I feel like there's this kind of Christian stigma. It's like, oh, they care more about the animals than they do about human beings. And it's almost like you have to pick. I've heard that a lot. It's like, well, if they would care about, the unborn as much as they would care about these, it's the us and them thing.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And I really do think that's why the environmental thing it's so divisive, is because politics has just taken a hold of it. And it's not a stewardship issue anymore. It's about us and them. And if you feel that way, then you're not part of us. And I don't know.
So Paul talked about the gospel being preached. I think it's in Philippians, the first chapter, as a means of getting back at him. Like Paul was in prison, so there were some people that were jealous of Paul's ministry that started launching ahead. And his followers were going, Paul, you're losing ground. Paul was like, dude, they're preaching the gospel. I don't care why they preach it. So if someone is caring for the environment, let's applaud that. They may not understand that. They may think it's Mother Earth and miss
Right.
the point. And that's part of this too.
right. That is part of it. Yeah.
Part of this is you're elevating Earth to this divine thing. Let's see what the universe has to say about that.
Right.
If they're honoring what God created and they're trying to care for it, let's celebrate that. And maybe they need some revelation about where it comes from. But if someone is trying to care for the planet, even if it's from motives that aren't fully developed biblically, let's celebrate they're trying to care. We care about the planet too, and be bridge builders instead of creating a divide. Because a lot of people that are out there, politics aside, trying to care for the planet are really doing great things. Like I think the people that are fighting for whales or ending the killing of elephants for tusks and those kind of things, let's go.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And maybe their motives are different than mine, but I appreciate them in the fight.
So you mentioned earlier, like the global climate change. So that
You mean
tends to
global
be
warming?
right.
Right.
That tends to be kind of the hot button issue right now when it comes to the environment. That's the thing that most people are talking about is global climate change. So from your perspective, is this something that Christians should be investing resources into, like figuring out what do we do about this? How do we lessen the effects of this on the environment? Is this something that we should prioritize
I think if they
more?
feel led to, they should. I think there'd be plenty of Christians who feel led to look more into that and figure out how we can help reduce that cause and effect if we are in fact behind it. That's great stewardship, and if you feel led to do that, you should go for it because you probably help somebody in the long run. I kind of leave that because of my theology. I'm kind of leaving that in the hands of God. I feel like He's got the planet. And big picture, my backyard is my responsibility, but the planet's kind of God's. And I feel like it's not kind of God's, it's God's.
It's God's.
And so, again, I may be naive there, Lauren, but I don't spend a lot of time fretting over that. But if there are people that feel called to really jump into that battlefield and fight more for the reducing of those effects on the planet, I applaud them.
It's funny because a lot of people, when we had all these bizarre weather conditions, the last couple of years, weather has been crazy.
Yes, it has.
And a lot of people are like, oh, the Bible talks about like this change in weather patterns, like before the end of the world. What do you say about that?
That's vague.
Okay.
What I say about it is people, since Jesus left, have been saying, oh, this is what Jesus talked about, here it comes, and we're still here. It does talk about more signs and wonders in the heavens and not so much about weather. So I don't know that you can build a biblical case for global warming, global climate change as a sign the world is ending. Maybe there's a cause and effect there, but I think God's got it.
Yeah.
God's got it.
But you're not saying God's got it, so we shouldn't do anything about
I'm
it.
saying
in
the
meantime.
Bible doesn't say the weather patterns, doesn't, as far as I know, mention weather patterns as a sign of the end of the times. He does mention signs in the universe, in the world. But I'm not saying be naive either. You tried to trap me there. I see what you did there. I'm not
I'm
going.
always
I'm not falling for it.
I'm
No,
always
no,
trying
I'm
to
not falling
trap
for
you.
it.
So, but we only have a couple seconds left.
Bummer.
But from your
So much fun.
perspective, an issue of the environment is something that we should. I mean, it's something that we should take care of. It's God's creation. We need to steward it. But you don't think that it trumps like human life, human right issues?
No,
Okay.
because the planet is not created in the image of God, and you are, and I am. And that little 4-year-old, I had the pleasure of trying to teach how to swim down in Nicaragua a few weeks ago, who lives in abject poverty and won't see a pool again until we're down there again. She's created in the image of God, and she's more important than a tree, and she's more important than a bird, and she's more important than the universe. And those are pretty important,
Yeah.
but they're not in God's image. And so, yeah, I think human life and human life issues trump nature issues. Thank you for putting that at the end of the podcast.
Right.
No, that's true. I absolutely believe that. I think the Bible teaches it.
No,
We
I
are-
think that- I mean-
we are not products of our environment. We're created to rule over it. If evolution's true, we're on the same level.
Right.
Evolution's not true. There's a difference, and there's different sources for nature and humans, and that makes humans more valuable.
That's very well said.
So there.
There you go.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was a just great little summary of the whole podcast. Well done. You said
you.
something
Said
really
something
intelligent.
meaningful. Let's suppose you were a good pastor. You
just
said
pretend.
something. You said something meaningful. Thank you.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for sending in this question. I hope that we address this from the same angle that we were inferring a little bit from the question what you were getting at. But fantastic question. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
it's
for
great.
submitting it. If you guys have more questions or you want us to talk more about this, well, you need to dust up on your global climate change.
Thank you. I'll work on that.
You can send those questions to
me some warning.
acfellowship.org/podcast. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Thank you, Will.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll see you guys next week.